Yeah, it is good to have you back. If you're just joining us, this is Firecrackers and we're just about to get started. And the first topic is Dangote's refinery and the economic benefit. All Nigerians are expected to benefit from this because despite the fact that this is supposed to be a private business, it will ripple to favor all of Nigerians. So let us even start. The commissioning of this refinery by Buhari that is expected to process 650,000 barrels of crude oil daily. How did that make you feel?
Proud, because that is the largest single train, that is very important to include, single train refinery in the world. There are bigger refineries, but they are not single train refineries. So that is huge. For a long time, Nigeria has been looking for the opportunity to say, I have the first, something you can boogie about. But there has not been many things that came our way. But as far as this is concerned, it is something that Nigeria can boogie about.
Thank you.
So that's good.
And now let us talk about the economic benefit of this, because one of the things that Nigerians as a whole are always, they might not really be concerned about politics, but the economy, that is one thing that eats Nigerians. Of course, the politics eats us too. But when it comes to the economy, that is when every family is on the lookout. But when we talk about economy, it's not just standard of living, but the one that concerns the whole nation as a whole. So let's start from there. How would this really, what are we going to benefit from this refinery?
Okay, we can start from industrialization. Nigerians have been talking about, we are backward when it comes to industrialization. This is a huge industry. We're talking about 18.5 billion US dollar plant sitting right there. Now, that the industrial base that single company represents is probably bigger than the entire industrial state of 3, 4, 5 states put together, that one company. Now, when you think about the employment opportunities that it represents, depending on who you're listening to, it could be anything in between 100,000 and 300,000. That is huge as far as employment is concerned. Apart from that, it will produce PMS, among other fractions that will be produced. Now, when you look at what we spend our FX on, one of it is importing refined products into this country. So that will save us the money we have been spending, the FX we have been spending importing this product. Then beyond that, by the time all these refineries are working, Nigeria will be producing more than we consume. That means there's an export opportunity. So not only are we going to conserve foreign exchange, we will earn foreign exchange as a country. One of the reasons why our naira has been unstable, has been very volatile, is that we don't have much that we offer to the outside world. But if we have functional refineries now, then we can offer refined products, not just crude oil now, but refined products to the outside world. So these are some of the benefits that we see out there. Some of the output of that company, apart from the popular one like PMS, diesel, kerosene, and all the other, are also, when you talk of something like polypropylene. Polypropylene is a raw material for another industry entirely. So people who are doing building materials and the rest of it can leverage on that product and build another set of industries. No, not to talk of all those fertilizers, the petrochemicals, and all the rest of it that are there. So it's a huge one for us as a country.
Yes, indeed, and this is so huge, like you said. It makes one wonder, what has Nigeria been doing? We discovered oil since 1956. In fact, we had the first refinery in the country. That was near Port Harcourt in 1965. Up to 1965 to date, we can't boast of one functional refinery in the country. It has always been passed from one administration to the administration. What does this say about Nigeria as a country when it comes to we taking charge of our own economy?
I think it's more for me about government getting involved in business. So we had the first refinery, we had the second, we had the third, we had four. We actually have 4 refineries, 2 in Port Harcourt, 1 in Kaduna, another in Warri. I think the last one was probably concluded in the 70s. After a few years, the Nigerian factor crept in. And what is the Nigerian factor when it comes to business? It is that the government has zero capacity, has not shown any capacity for being able to run anything that is a business. Even when the business is to print money, Nigeria government cannot print money profitably. So I'm not surprised that refineries, if you cannot run even basic businesses successfully, how about a refinery? Refinery it requires high level of efficiency, competitiveness, which a Nigerian government has not shown capacity to put on the table as we speak. Which is to say that even if after this recent contract, if this public refinery starts to work, if it will be run by government, it will die within another 2 years. Like anybody who has a diary can keep it. In a couple of years, it will be back dead as dodo. As it is. Because government doesn't take business with the right level of seriousness, efficiency that it deserves. It's seen as if, oh, our own share of the national cake has come. Let's cut it as we like and eat it up. And the only government that comes to mind, the only business that comes to my mind that is a government business that makes money is NLNG. And why does NLNG make money? NLNG make money because government is a minority owner. So it is a private sector that is a majority owner. It is a private sector that runs NLNG. That is why it is successful. The day it becomes a government business, that will be the beginning of the end of that institution.
Okay, well, since today is May 28, in fact, the president already gave his farewell speech to all Nigerians today. So from tomorrow, that is the official handover date. Because since he said that if we are to look at the track record of Nigerian government so far, it has not really been encouraging when it comes to them handling businesses.
Correct.
But tomorrow being the inauguration day, do you have faith that perhaps this new administration might do something better, especially with this refinery?
Well, I'm a firm believer in Project Nigeria. So what keeps me going also is to keep the hope alive. It behoves on the incoming government to say, look, it is aware that it has received the transition document. It has had various engagements. So the outgoing government has its own relevant teams. The incoming one has relevant teams. So these teams have been engaging over the last 3 months. They've also exchanged transition document, to say this is the state of things in every relevant sector of the country. So one of it will be the refinery. So the team that discussed the oil and gas space will have files that spoke to the reality that, look, the federal government of Nigeria has awarded contracts for the revamp of the 4 refineries. So I will expect that the incoming government will ask, so what is the status of the contract? The Port Harcourt refinery, the second phase was to have been concluded last month. So it's a 3-phase project, so I say one more phase to find out, oh, that one that was supposed to have been concluded in April, has it been concluded? When is the 3rd phase? Are we on course? So I expect the new government to find out all of that, because in the real sense, it is an important component of the plan to remove subsidy. What part of a segment of the society have been asking for the public refineries to work. Now that segment of the society, if the public refineries are not working, they will not be happy to support the first subsidy removal. They say, let the government refinery be working. So it is also in the interest of the incoming government to, update us on what is going, share the vision with us, let us all have a buy-in in whatever they want to do. Have a robust stakeholder engagement across all stakeholder groups so that we can move the country forward as far as the issue of refineries is concerned.
Or would you perhaps recommend something that happened, something like what happened with the Power Holding Company of Nigeria, the privatization? Our government is still involved in it, but it is not as actively as it should be. Do you think something like that might also benefit this refinery situation too?
Obviously, if we're ever going to get those refineries to keep working, it's either we sell them outrightly, that would be my preference anyway, sell them. But in the alternative, if we don't want to sell, because I know there are, very huge sentiments around selling those things. So make sure it is a private sector. You concession it to the private sector to run. Let the private sector run it. If government should run it, it will be dead.
That is quite sad. Yes. And one of the things, because when we talk about the government relinquishing power to the private sector, one of the things that comes to people's mind is monopoly, which is one of the fear people have for this Dangote refinery. If it is the only one that is functional in Nigeria, even serving some other African nation along with Nigeria, then they can do whatever they want with the prices. Since it's through their efforts, they are in charge of most of the production, or all of the production, they can decide the price of it. So what do you have to say about monopoly and how we can navigate it?
One of the ways we can do it is to ensure that those public refineries actually start to work. Otherwise, we have created a monopoly, and it's a huge, huge monopoly. And the gentleman knows how to work it very well. That is the reality. So it would be nice if there is a bit of competition, so that as you have in other spaces, of course the electricity that you mentioned, there are different discos that are there, there are different gencos as well, elements of competition in a way. If you talk of say sugar, where he also plays, you have other competitors in the sugar space. There is Boa, there is flour mills, there are others in that space. So it's always nice not to have to depend on one particular person. So those public refineries might be the easiest way out, the low-hanging fruit, to ensure that that is not a strict monopoly. Don't forget though that federal government is a co-owner of Dangote Refineries. 20% ownership of Dangote Refineries is owned by federal government.
Okay, well, I sincerely hope that would have much impact on, because a lot of Nigerians
it may not. Because when you think about whether you're talking of decisions that are going to be made by simple majority or by a super majority, maybe two-thirds majority, it means that Dangote, if he has 80%, whether it is simple majority or super majority, he has it. So at a board, someone with 20% may not have a strong, well, although there are issues of minority protection, but you don't really have the voice of the man who sits across the table with 80% of the holdings.
Yeah, that is, well, I sincerely hope we would be able to navigate all this, because since this is spelling good news to a lot of Nigerians, then perhaps the yearly anticipated queue at filling stations, you see black market all over the road, because this is like the solution to it all, and we could only hope that this all works out for the best. But now, when we are talking about Nigeria's economy, does this mean that Nigeria is not so capable of socialist? Because it seems like if it's a private individual that is operating the thing like we have in capitalism, then that might be better. So does this mean that Nigeria as a country is not capable of socialism?
We're not a socialist society. There's no doubt about that. We're also not purely capitalist. We're somewhere in between, like many other nations in the world, across the world anyway. We have seen the efficiency and management capacity that the private sector brings on board. I'll give you a very good example. As at the time private sector was brought into telecommunications in Nigeria, Nitel had less than 1 million lines across the entire country. And as at that time, Nitel had probably been in existence for more than 3 decades. They had only 800 something thousand lines. We brought in those private sector people. And today, even old women in the village have a phone. There was once a time when we had to go to a neighbor's house, a neighbor that has a phone, to go and receive call from uncle that wants to call from London. We broke the back of that. Don't also forget that it wasn't that anybody pushed Nitel away. No. Nitel was also in competition when those private sector people came. It died a natural death because it was unable to compete, despite the fact that it has the highest number of licenses that you can think about. But it failed. It died when the private sector came. So, and we can see what private sector has done. Today, we probably have close to 150 million lines. Within a much shorter period, that Nitel could not deliver 1 million lines in Nigeria. That is the kind of thing that the private sector brings to the table. So the cry for now is that government should get out of the way of business and let the private sector do it. Their own duty is to create the right environment for this private sector to thrive and regulate whatever the private sector is doing so that they don't fleece the people.
I'm talking about the right environment, because one of the call for people is they should make these licenses available to individuals who, from their track record, it shows that they are perhaps capable of running a refinery. But do you think the environment, the business environment in Nigeria would actually permit that? Because for one to get an operating license for a business so big that would benefit the whole of the country, it is a big deal. And this is where the corruption factor also comes in, because for you to get a license, you might probably have to bribe a whole lot of people. So putting that into consideration, what do you think we need to do there?
Okay, I remember these discussions came up around 2012 when there was an attempt to remove fuel subsidy. And in a part of the information that came out then was that there were about 20 or more people, about 20 people who have collected refinery license for several years. None of them built a refinery. And why were people collecting licenses without building a refinery? It was because the mathematics of the refining did not add up. Why was it not adding up? The subsidy regime. The subsidy regime creates certain level of uncertainty. If you even look at what Dangote has done, Dangote Refinery is located in a free trade zone.
Yes.
It is not an accident. It is deliberate. Essentially, you may get a little blunt about it and say the guy can decide not to sell to Nigeria. And it will get all he said, because I say, oh, Nigeria, you people and this is your subsidy, right? Okay, I'm going to keep your subsidy. Look, I will sell my fuel to other places where I can get paid. That was one of the problems that initially hampered the issue of the developing refineries in Nigeria. The subsidy regime is so fraught with corruption. I like to describe it as a dark hole of unaccountability. Nobody really knows. You know, when the hole is dark and you're trying to see what is at the bottom, you can't see anything. You know, but because there are huge beneficiaries of that regime, they have sustained it consistently for several years, such that not even the military could remove it. When OBJ came, he toyed with it. At a point in time, OBJ actually removed it, but we went back to it, because after you remove fuel subsidy at an instant, you develop a template with all the variables that will automatically help you to readjust the price as the international prices change. But if you don't do that, if you remove it at an instance, by the time all those variables move and you refuse to adjust, you have gone back to a subsidy regime, which was horrible. So OBJ could not do it, Yaradua could not do it, Jonathan could not do it. Buhari had spent 8 years, he could not do it. So it is clear that it is not plain vanilla. It's not some moi that anybody. So it requires proper planning, a right level of engagement. I would say that the best shot was the shot taken by Jonathan. But unfortunately, Jonathan got derailed in the December of that year, because the engagement that Jonathan was having, the government was having, was meant to continue up until April. But some governors came and they persuaded him that, okay, you need to remove this thing by December. He removed it and it boomeranged. Yeah. So I'm hoping that the incoming government will have worked out a more robust plan, and we will have the right level of engagement so that we can revisit subsidy matter.
Yeah, because we are still sort of caught up in it. Because by June, the allocation that was meant for fuel subsidy is going to expire.
Correct.
And from June downwards, what is supposed to be the fate of Nigerians when it comes to petrol? Because this new refinery is supposed to start the refining properly and perhaps distribution by July. So the whole of June is still just one big blank. What do we do with it? Are we expecting the incoming administration to perhaps continue with the subsidy, or we are all on our own?
It's a mix of many things. Number one is there's nothing sacrosanct about June. And the incoming government should not allow itself to be railroaded into thinking that there is something sacrosanct about June. It is his own plan for removal that should determine the precise date of removal, not issue of budget. If you have not made budgetary provision for it, then you can prepare a supplementary budget and take it to the National Assembly and say, I need this thing to continue for another 2 months. And this is what it will cost in subsidy. They will pass it, they will pay it. You see, across the world, several countries have done the same things. It was successful in some, it failed in some other countries. In countries where the plans were not good enough, where the engagements were not robust enough, it failed. And when it fails, this is what normally happens. You remove it, there will be protest. People will say, no, we cannot survive this. So people will hit the streets. The protest will start from, we need you to reverse the removal of the subsidy. By the time the protest is entering the 3rd day, they have started adding on another thing. Somebody will remember, our education is not good until you change education. Our healthcare has problem. Before you know it, you have trouble on your hands. The last one that comes to my mind was Kazakhstan. It even became violent. It became a violent protest. So it is something that requires the right level of engagement, proper planning to exit. It has been done successfully in a couple of other places. Let's go and look at those places where they did it successfully. What can we learn and adapt to our own environment? We should also be conscious of the fact that the beneficiaries of the status quo are waiting in the wings, and they will do anything to frustrate the removal of fuel subsidy. And they have all it takes to do that. When it comes to money, they have the money. They can do media, they can do anything, they can sponsor protests, they can do anything to frustrate it. But I believe that the incoming government also knows all these problems and is prepared. It shouldn't be caught in, oh, we must do it in June. What is sacrosanct about June? What stops it from being July or August? What stops it from being in phases? It must consider a proper plan and not jump into it. Otherwise, it will boomerang.
Now let's talk about cooperation from citizens, because whenever there has been any attempt of fuel subsidy, you always see people lamenting the hardship is too much. But do you feel informing the citizens now, educating the citizen, like it is going to be hard for a while, but then just give it like perhaps 6 months or 1 year and everything is going to be chill, so to speak. It is all going to come to the benefit of everyone. Do you feel it is also important, while the government is making its own plan, it is also important to perhaps carry the citizens along, so it is not going to meet them with shock and they will not be subject to this someone whispering into their ears and telling them that, oh, they want to do us bad, they don't love us and stuff like that.
Citizens will start to fill the gap of communication with all sort of theories, conspiracy theories. So it is important to be upfront with the citizen. And that is what I mean by robust stakeholder engagement. There are several stakeholders. The citizens are stakeholders. The oil importers are stakeholders. Nigerian Labour Congress are stakeholders. There are several stakeholders. And we must all agree on the way to move forward on this matter. It is when you have those encouragements, those discussions, and everybody is on the same page. That is when you can have the right level of support. There will be fight, like I said. People have enjoyed this camp for decades, including politicians. So they will fight and they will resist. But if we are all united on this, and one thing that will also play out is honesty. Nigerians are tired of being lied to by the government. This is not the first time we have been told that we are working on removal. We have been told before in this same country that the subsidy has been removed, when indeed it was not removed. It wasn't. So as we speak,